Hi guys, and welcome back to a new video. In today's video, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to go through my personal top 5 favorite mounts from each expansion. If you've watched my channel for some time, you already probably know that I'm a big fan of mounts in World of Warcraft, and this is something that really made me passionate about the game. And so I think it's interesting to see what were some of the best mounts we were able to get from each expansion. So let's start with Classic WoW. Classic WoW has not that many mounts, so we were a little bit more limited back then, but there are still some really interesting ones. The first one that I want to add as number 5 is the Rivendare's Death Charger. So this is the mount that you can get from Lord Orius Rivendare in Stratholme, and this is, in my opinion, a really nice mount. And especially what made this mount even cooler was the fact that you were able to get it on both Horde and Alliance players. So it means that for Alliance players, it was the only skeleton horse that you were able to get in the game. After that, my next mount is going to be the Frostwolf Hauler. So this mount is from the Alterac Valley, and this is a PvP mount. And even though right now it looks very low res, I did really enjoy this mount back in Classic WoW. Especially I love the color of the mount and especially the color of the eyes. Then at number 3, we will have the Swift Razashi Raptor from Zul'Gurub. So this mount is really nice, first of all, because it was a mount that both Alliance and Horde players were able to get. So again, if you're playing on an Alliance character, back in Classic WoW, it was your only way to get a Raptor mount, which again made this mount really cool. And also, I just love the color and the armor on the mount. So overall, this is something I really like. Right now, this mount is not obtainable anymore, but you can still manage to buy it from the black market auction house. Then at number 2, we're gonna have the Black Kiraji Battle Tank, which is the only legendary mount, or one of the only legendary mounts that were ever introduced into the game. And this mount is obviously legendary. It's something that only a few players have in the game. It was very hard to get. You were only able to get it when there was the opening of the gates of Ankiraj event that would be there. And so only one or a few people per realm were able to get this mount. And then at number 1, of course, we have the Swift Zulian Tiger. So for me, this mount is really the coolest one from Vanilla WoW. The main reason is because when you're playing on a Horde character, it was the only Tiger mount that you were able to use. And in my opinion, the Tiger mounts are one of the best models that we have in the game. And next to that, of course, this is the only orange or Bengal tiger mount that you can get in the game. And so for that reason, this is still a mount that a lot of players are trying to get their hands on. So this mount was removed from the game, and it was originally available from Zul'Gurub, but now you can still get it by buying it from the black market auction house. It's just probably going to cost you between 5 to 10 million gold on average. Now let's go through the mounts for the Burning Crusade. And at number 5, we will have the Raven's Lord. So this mount is something you can get from the dungeon, the Setex Hall in heroic difficulty from Enzu. And this is a very nice mount. I remember back in the Burning Crusade, it was such a unique model, and yes, just such a cool mount that everyone wanted to get it. And even till today, it is still a very nice mount to get. After that, at number 4, we're gonna have the Amani Warbear. So this mount has been removed from the game, but you were able to get it through Zulaman when doing it in a specific time limit, and this is a very nice mount. Especially back in the Burning Crusade, it was our first bear mount, but when you look at the armor on it, it was not just a simple bear mount, it was a really cool mount. And so sadly, this is not something you can get now, but you have the over version, which is this one right here. You have the Amani Hunting Bear from the Time Walking event and the Amani Battle Bear that you can get from Zulaman. After that, at number 3, we have the different gladiator mounts from this expansion. So here, as you can see, I have one of them, which is the Vengeful Gladiator's Drake. And I think these mounts in general were absolutely fantastic. And yes, these are still some of my favorite mounts in the game. And I do think they looked really, really, really awesome. Of course, you can get some of these different Never Drakes if you want in the game, but there are none others that will have an armor on them. And so it makes these different gladiators mounts really unique. Then at number 2, we will have, of course, the Ashes of Alar mount. So back in the days, this mount was really legendary, and I mean, it was so vibrant, so different than anything else we had in the game. And so it was definitely one of the most popular mounts in the game for a long time, but especially in the Burning Crusade. And so I still really think this mount is absolutely amazing. And you can, of course, get it by killing Kael'thas in the Eye, the raid from the Burning Crusade, and this is a low drop chance. And at number 1, we have what is, in my opinion, not only the best mount in the Burning Crusade, but in the entire game, and this is the Spectral Tiger mount. So this mount was introduced back in the Burning Crusade through the trading card game for World of Warcraft, and it is still something that players are trying to get till this day. Who knows if at some point Blizzard will make this mount available through a trading post or through a Twitch drop or something like that. Right now, if you are playing on all the different realms other than in China, the only way for you to get it is by getting the codes from the cards or by buying it from eBay or some of these different sources, and it will cost you a lot of gold. But again, in China, for instance, it's something that is being sold on the store. And so who knows, maybe at some point Blizzard will decide to also do that, even though I do think it will kill the entire interest and also the entire value of this mount. Now let's talk about Wrath of the Lich King. And here let's start at number 5 with the X45 Earthbreaker, or also called Big Love Rocket. So this mount is something you can actually currently farm because it is linked to the Love is in the Air event, and you will be able to get it when doing the daily dungeon, and you will be able to get it from the Earthshade box. You need to be on characters, I believe, level 60, 70 or more. And basically, this is something that is extremely, extremely rare. After that, at number 4, we have the legendary Time Lost Proto Drake. So this Drake is nothing too special. We have a lot of them in the game, especially in Wrath of the Lich King. We had many of these models. But what makes this mount so unique was the way you were able to get it. It's from a rare that you will be able to find in one of the zones of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, which is this one right here, the Storm Peaks. And basically, this rare will be all around the map. It was extremely, extremely difficult to find. It is a guaranteed drop, but what really made this mount hard to get was simply finding the rare and killing it. So definitely something that players spent weeks and weeks and weeks trying to farm. And when you were finally able to get it, everyone was jealous. So I still think this mount is really cool, and for that reason, I'm putting it at number 4. Then at number 3, we have the Invincible mount from Arthas, the Lich King. And so this is something you can still get right now when doing ICC in 25 mode heroic. And so this is a pretty rare mount, even though now a lot of players have it. And it was obviously a really cool mount to get back in Wrath of the Lich King, simply because it was super unique, super beautiful, and it's invincible, the mount from the Lich King. So overall, this is a really, really badass mount. But while it was unique, it was not as unique as my number 2, and this is Mimiron's Head. This mount is something you can get from the raid Ulduar. It will drop from the boss Mimirons. And this is, in my opinion, again, one of the coolest mounts we had back in the day, simply because it was so unique and just something that, again, when you saw it, you knew exactly what it was. Just before I go through my number 1, I also want to mention as an honorable mention this mount right here, which is the Tundra Mammoth. So the reason why I want to put this mount is simply because of these two guys right here on the side. It was the first time that you were able to get some vendors on your mount, and so it made this mount something that everyone was having back in Wrath of the Lich King. So even though the mount is nothing special, as you can see, it's just a normal mammoth mount, this is still something that was really cool to get, simply because having vendors on the mount was a really big plus in the game. And still, till this day, this is something that a lot of players are using. So overall, I think this is definitely worth mentioning in this list as well. And finally, at number 1, maybe this is something some of you will disagree with, but I'm gonna put the Magic Rooster Egg. So this is another one of the mounts you are able to get from the TCG cards, and this is still something you can get right now, but again, for a lot of gold or a lot of real money. And the reason why I'm putting it at number 1 is because this mount just looked so ridiculous and just so unique that even though, of course, all the other mounts are mentioned are amazing, I still think this one is still something that today nothing really matches, and still something that is so unique. Now let's talk about Cataclysm. Whoa. So my first mount is this one right here, which is the Phosphorescent Drake. So what made this mount really unique was, again, the way you were able to get it and how hard it was to get. Basically, this is a mount you will be able to get when killing the rare Ionax in Deep Home. And what, again, made this mount so difficult to get was the fact that it was only spawning a few times, I believe, a week. And also it could spawn from any points in the map. And what you had to do was jump on the mount and basically kill it while you're on top of the mount. After that, at number 4, we have the Drake of the North Winds. So this is something you can still get from the dungeon, the Vortex Pinnacle, from the boss Alterus in Heroic difficulty. And overall, I just really like the design of this mount. And even if you add over one of these models that were also available back in Cataclysm WoW, I still think this one was my favorite one, and it's a very nice mount. Then at number 3, we have the Blazing Drake, which is a mount that you can get from Deathwing. And so this is a pretty nice mount, especially I did love the color of the mount and the horns. You have another model that is available, but in my opinion, this is really my favorite one, and definitely a nice mount to get. Then at number 2, we have the mount from Azeroth in the Raid Firelands. So this mount is just so cool. Again, this is the same model as the Raven's Lord, but this is a fiery version. And so when it was first introduced into the game, I remember players were really excited about this mount. I mean, this is just a literal ball of lava or like fire that you're sitting on, which I think is super cool. And this is still something you can get pretty easily by killing Azeroth. Then another honorable mention here, and this is the Sandstone Drake or Vial of Sands. So the reason why I'm putting this mount here is simply because it was the first time that we were getting a mount that, first of all, you could transform yourself into, and also that could carry another player, which I think made this mount really cool and definitely super unique. And finally, at number 1, we will have the Pureblood Firehawk that you will be able to get also from Firelands, but this time from Ragnaros, the last boss. And this mount is just extremely cool, very badass, and something overall that was really cool to get back in Cataclysm WoW, and even till this day, it's a really nice mount to have. Now let's talk about Mist of Pandaria, and at number 5, we have the Jeweled Onyx Panther. So this is a mount you can craft, and this is something that, in my opinion, looks just so cool and so unique. Then at number 4, we have the Vicious Saber mount. So this is something that, in my opinion, just looks so badass and so cool, and it was also some of the first vicious mounts that were ever introduced into the game. You can still get this mount by getting a Vicious Saddle from PvP, and this is obviously a mount that you will only be able to use on your Alliance characters. Then at number 3, you have all the different Pandaren Phoenixes. So these mounts were rewarded when you were able to do the challenge mode for all the different dungeons from Mist of Pandaria in Argent mode. And so this is really cool. You had 4 different versions of this mount. Sadly, all of them have been removed from the game since the end of Mist of Pandaria. And recently, during Mist of Pandaria Remix, you were able to get this version right here, the August Phoenix. So this is something that most players now have with them, but the original ones all have been removed from the game. Then at number 2, we have the Astral Cloud Serpent. I mean, this mount just speaks for itself. It is so cool. And this is by far one of the best Cloud Serpents mount that we have in the game. And you're still able to get it from the Vaults of Mogushan, and you will be able to get it from the boss Edegon. So I have an honorable mention, and this is the Expedition Yak. This mount really was unique because you were able to get a Transmogrifier on your mount, and this is something that even today most players are still using. As you can see, the guy next to me just arrived and directly opted on his Yak. So you have now another mount that allows you to do that. This is a mount you can buy from the store, but this is still the best option that you have. And then of course at number 1, we have the Heavenly Onyx Cloud Serpent. So I'm not sure anyone is going to be surprised by that. This is the mount you are able to get from the Shah of Anger, and before Mist of Pandaria Remix, it was one of the rarest mounts in the whole game. And so this is really something that, in my opinion, is truly the best mount from Mist of Pandaria, and definitely something that even today a lot of players are still using, even though it's not as rare as it was before Mist of Pandaria Remix. Now let's talk about Warlords of Draenor, and here I want to start at number 5 with the Void Talion of the Dark Star mount. So this is another one of these Raven's Lords mount, but this is the purple version, and in my opinion the most vibrant version and the coolest one. After that, at number 4, we will add the Solar Spirehawk. So this is a mount you can get from the world boss Rukmar, and this is something you can still get today. This is just a very, very rare mount. You can also buy it from the Black Market Auction House for quite a lot of gold. And this is, in my opinion, again, a really cool model. Then at number 3, and maybe this is something you will disagree with me, but we have the different Gladiators mounts. So here, these were the normal models from the Groundlings mounts that you were also able to get. But what made these mounts really unique was the colors on the mounts and also all the different armors and the saddles. And overall, I think these mounts were extremely, extremely badass and are still today some of my favorite ground mounts. And then you also had this other red version right here. And finally, you also had this black and white version. After that, at number 2, we have the Felsteel Annihilator. So this is the mount you will be able to get when killing Archimon in Mythic difficulty. And this is something you can still farm pretty easily today. And even though this mount is a little bit annoying with the way it moves, it was such a cool mount and still something that I'm using from time to time. And finally, at number 1, we have the Iron Hoof Destroyer. So this mount is just so massive and so impressive that I had to put it at number 1. Even though this is not a flying mount, it's still something that I remember when I saw for the first time, I just found so cool and badass that I immediately wanted it. And so this is by far one of my favorite mounts from this expansion. And you can still get it by killing Black Hand in Mythic difficulty. After that, let's talk about Legion. And here, this is where it starts to be really difficult because we had so many mounts added in Legion and in the expansions after that there is a lot to choose from. But at number 5, I'm gonna put the different Gladiators mounts from this expansion. So here we got a lot of these different models, and I do think they look really, really cool. Especially because, again, these are the only armored versions of these models that you can get in the game. Then after that, at number 4, we will have the Lothian Prowler that you will be able to get from Vulpin the Elusive in the Suramar zone in Legion. And the reason why I'm adding it is because it was our first Fox mount and definitely one of the most exciting mounts from this expansion. And so I do really love this mount, and even though it's not something super badass or anything like that, I did really enjoy getting this mount. Then at number 3, we're gonna have the Class Order All mount from the Shaman class, and this is the Farseer's Raging Tempest. And the reason why is because it was our first elemental mount, and it was super massive and really impressive. And so these were some of my favorite mounts from the different order rolls. Then at number 2, we're gonna have the Black Widow mount. So this is the spider mount that initially you were able to get for 2 million gold from the Mad Merchant in Dalaran, the Legion version. And normally it was supposed to stay unique, but since then Blizzard decided to add many other models of spider mounts, so it makes this mount a little less unique, but it is still one of my favorite ones from this expansion. Then as an honorable mention, I have the two achievement mounts for adding 350 and 400 mounts in the game. So first you have this one for 350 and then you add this one for 400. And I still think these were super cool and super badass. And I do really want Blizzard to add more of these achievement mounts because these were super cool. And finally, at number 1, we have the Fellblaze Infernal mount from Gul'dan in the Nighthold. And this one is the version you can actually get not only in Mythic difficulty, but in all the different difficulties. And overall, I think these mounts were just incredible and so unique. So definitely something that even today, I still think are super badass. Then let's talk about BFA. And here we have at number 5 this prestigious Bloodforge Courser, which is a PvP mount that you will be able to get when reaching honor level 500, which is something extremely hard to do. So this mount is super nice. This is a flying mount and overall something extremely hard and super rare to see. Then at number 4, we have the mount from King's Rest, and this is the Tomestalker mount. So this is the mummy version of the promotion mount you were able to get for the release of Battle for Azeroth, but this mount is just so cool and so unique that I had to add it to this list. And you can still get it right now from King Dazar in King's Rest in Mythic difficulty. Then at number 3, we have Sharkbait from Freehold. So this is another one of these dungeons mounts that you can get. And this one, I'm adding it because even though we had other pirate mounts at the same time, this was really one of the first pirate model that we were able to get in BFA. And I really think these different pirate mounts are super cool. Then at number 2, I'm gonna mention the wheel mount. So this is the version from the achievement Mechadon, but you have other versions that are available as well. It's just that this mount, in my opinion, was so unique and just so interesting that even though it's only a ground mount, I can't stop to think about it as one of the best mounts we were able to get in this expansion. And of course, at number 1, we're gonna have the Brutosaur mount. So the reason why this mount is number 1 is because, well, first of all, it looks very impressive. This is one of the biggest and largest mounts that we have in the game. And of course, it was the first time that we had an auction house on a mount, which I think is extremely useful. So this is a mount you were able to get for 5 million gold back in BFA, and now you can still get it through the black market auction house. Now let's talk about Shadowlands, and I just want to show you the amount of mounts we were able to get in this expansion. So for instance here, these are the mounts for Classic WoW, for the Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm. And then when you arrive here, you can see Battle for Azeroth was already a lot, and then you have Shadowlands, where you have all these mounts, which is insane when you compare it, for instance, with the Burning Crusade or with Classic WoW. So anyway, we have a lot of mounts available in this expansion. At number 4, we're gonna have the different Ventier flying mounts, the Grave Wind models, because I think these mounts are actually very impressive and super well done. And even though these were parts of all the different Covenant mounts that not a lot of people are using or not as much as other mounts in the game, I still think these were super impressive and really cool. After that, at number 4, we're gonna have the Reigns of the Fallen Charger. And so this mount is super cool. You can get it when killing the rare in the Maw. This is a rare that is only spawning a few times a day, and you will only have a small chance of getting the mount from the rare. But overall, this is a really nice mount, and I love all the different models from Shadowlands for the different horses, but this golden version is by far my favorite one. Then at number 3, we're gonna have all the different N mounts. So here I don't really have one that I prefer over the other ones, but I just love this model. I think it's so unique, so interesting, and especially I love the fact that you have this special animation, which I think is super fun. After that, at number 2, we're gonna have all the different Gladiators mounts from this expansion. So the main reason why is because before Dragonflight, these were the only models you were able to get for these different drakes. And so I think it made these mounts super unique. And even though now you can get an unarmored version of these mounts, these are still some of the coolest gladiators mounts that we've had in a long time. And so that's why I'm putting them there at number 2. And finally, at number 1, we will have all the different Keystone Master achievement mounts. So here probably this black version is my favorite one, but these mounts were just so badass and so impressive, and this is something that even today I still think are some of the coolest mounts that you can get in the game. And sadly, these have been removed from the game, so you can't get these different models anymore. Now, for Dragonflight, at number 5, we will have the Ashadar mount from the trading post. So this is the first mount you were able to get from the trading post, and this is a really cool mount. Especially what makes it unique is the fact that during the day it will be yellow, and during the night it will be white, which I think is super cool for a mount. And this is the closest thing that we have from a risk updated version of the Spectral Tiger mount, which I think is super cool. Then at number 4, we're gonna have the different gladiators mounts from this expansion. So here it's very unique because we had 2 different models. We had this one right here, and then we also had this one. And I think this one is my favorite one. Then at number 3, we're gonna have this mount right here, Taiwan. So this is one of the dog mounts that you are able to get in the game, and this one comes from the achievement A World Awoken. And this is a pretty massive mount and a really nice mount overall. So it's not that easy to get because the achievements that you need to do is very intense, and it will require you to do all these achievements right here. But I think it's a really good reward overall. Then at number 2, we're gonna have Anurelos, which is the mount from Pirac in Mythic difficulty. This is something you can still get right now, even though the drop chance is really low. But this is a super nice flying mount, and overall one of my favorite mounts right now that I'm using all the time. And finally, at number 1, we have this customization option for your Island Drake that you were able to get from Aberus. And this is something that I just find super cool. It's sad that it has never really been made into a proper mount. You can only use it as a customization for, again, your Island Drake. But this is overall my favorite skin from this expansion. And finally, we have the War Within. And at number 5, we're gonna have Freyr Eyes of the Siren. So this is a mount you can get in the Siren Isle. I made a guide on how to get it, and yes, as you can see, I still don't have it myself. I got it on the PTR, but not in the live version of the game. And this is a really cool mount. This is the original Stormcrow that was that I might back in Mist of Pandaria or Warlords of Draenor. And we finally are able to get it, which is super nice. Then after that, we have Incognito. This is the Fell Cycle mount that you are able to get when doing all the secret activities that were released with the WoW 20th anniversary event. This is a mount you can still get right now, and it will just take you quite some time. I made a full guide if you are interested on how to get this mount. But overall, I really like the design of these new Fell Cycle mounts, and I think these are super cool. Then at number 3, we have the Cold Flame Tempest mount from the WoW 20th anniversary event. I think this mount is really nice. This is a really clean model, and I love the armor on the mount, and especially you can get some cosmetic items that will match this armor. Then at number 2, we're gonna have the Big G, which is the mount you will be able to get from killing Galewix in Mythic difficulty in patch 11.1. And just so you know, this mount is massive and it's super unique. And as you can see, again, I'm a Tauren and I will be small like that compared to the mount. So this is gonna be a wild mount to get, and this is a really cool and unique mount. And finally, at number 1, we have, of course, the new Mecha T-Rex mount that you will be able to get in the new raid in patch 11.1. And in my opinion, this mount is just crazy, and this is super cool, and also it will be very big as well. So overall, this is by far, so far, my favorite mount from the War Within. So that's pretty much it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you think about my top 5, and especially what are some of your favorite mounts in the game and for each expansion. I will be back very soon with more guides and more videos, and in the meantime I wish you a great day. Bye!